Alright, I just came back from hiking the Devil's Path in the Catskills, and I want to do a quick review on the tent that I used, the Tarptent Contrail. This tent is no longer produced by Tarptail. It has since been replaced by the Pro Trail, I believe it's called, and I think that the Pro Trail is probably going to help fix any of the objections that I have with this tent. So this tent is a non-freestanding tent. Basically what you do to pitch it is you got to come back here into the back, and you set up these posts right over here, and you stake those out, one and one on the other side. Then you bring it back up to the front of the tent, where you use your trekking pole to kind of pitch it right up into here, follow it down, stake out these two corners like this. Now the tent will stand up with just those four stakes. However, I find a few things. Number one, using this ridge line right here, that's the first thing I really like to do, because it helps to tie up the front of this and give it some tension so that you kind of keep it from tipping back. Sometimes what you'll see is that this, if you don't do that, it kind of sags forward and makes the bottom end of it kind of sag a little bit. The second thing I think is really important is staking out the sides of the tent right over here. And the reason why that is if you can see underneath here, essentially what happens is now this kind of has makes the tarp hang over the mesh. When you don't stake out the sides, it's pretty good in good weather. However, look on the inside here. Now you see how with the sides staked out, it kind of has the mesh hanging underneath. I have had camping trips where I did not stake out the sides and woke up with a little bit of a pool of water inside the tent due to the fact that the mesh was hanging out and the water was able to kind of leak in. So I just kind of always do that as a just in case. Now over here, this is where we have these tensioning things to kind of help pull some tension into the bathtub floor. And the last thing I do is by using that trekking pole at the foot of it, you're kind of able to raise the footbed up slightly, which helps kind of keep it away. So another thing you can do with this is, if this pole kind of here gets in the way of you a little bit, which it definitely will, I will typically tend to kind of slant it off to the side, and you just kind of make sure that you extend your trekking pole out a little bit more so it still kind of keeps the tension, but now you have a little bit of space there. Now, sitting within this tent here, you can see there is a decent amount of headroom if you sit right at the front. I'm about 6 feet tall. If I sit here, it's kind of okay. As soon as I go back to here, now my head starts hitting the ceiling. So it is a little bit compact. However, right here, these things I can sit in even with the mesh open if it's raining and still kind of not get rained on. Let's close the rain flap here for a second. The thing I like about this is coming over the top of this, and even just kind of leaving it hang like that. Sometimes in the rain you can kind of create like a nice little area here to kind of do your cooking in if you need to. There's plenty of space in this vestibule. By coming around there, basically what it does is it allows you to, when you seal this up, something like this. Never gets perfect. Gives you a pretty decent amount of vestibule space underneath here. Whew, it's a hot one today. It's getting pretty toasty in there already. Now, there's plenty of space underneath here to definitely keep your pack and your shoes and whatnot. There's not really any issues there. Seals back up like so. On the footbed, seeing as I carry two trekking poles anyways, it's real easy to just kind of collapse one of them, run a guy line right up around there, bring that down to stake it out to kind of help keep the footbed up. And I started doing this really importantly because by doing this, you see how it kind of creates like a little bit of more of a slope right here. I used to not do this, and sometimes if it would rain, I would actually find that the rain would start kind of pooling up right there on the bottom, which is just something else to be wary of, which now the new version of this tent, the Pro Trail, by just having a straight A-frame that comes down and it doesn't kind of slant out like this right here, it definitely fixes that problem. So I kind of wish they would have come out with that before I would have invested into this tent. I definitely would have gotten the upgraded version, and I don't know, I'm considering selling this one in order to get that new version there. But that's pretty much it. Tarptent Contrail, decent amount of space. Alright, let's talk about some of the negatives. So, while this tent is a very good deal, it's under $200 and it's under 2 pounds, which is pretty cool too. I like lightweight. The biggest problem that this tent runs into is condensation. So on this recent trip to the Catskills, the second night, it was incredibly still. There was no wind. Temps only got down into maybe the 60s or something like that at night. But even with the front door wide open, foot box staked up like that, I had a pretty decent amount of condensation on the inside of it. Just kind of, you know, nothing too crazy, but you know, if you touch the sides, it would get things a little bit damp. Everything on the whole trail was damp though, so it was kind of just one of those things. Now in cold weather, this tent, I have not had good success with it. I had it out on the Black Forest Trail in Pennsylvania in October, and the temps were dipping down into like the low 40s at night, pouring down raining, and what ended up happening was all night long on the inside of the tent, it was just condensation just showing up everywhere on this, and then the rain would kind of hit the top and shake all the rain down. So like, just try to picture yourself trying to get a good night's sleep and somebody keeps kind of spritzing cold water in your face all night. It did not work very well. At the same time, the bottom end over here, these can actually be adjusted up and down. So since I knew it was going to be raining real bad and I didn't want to get anything wet, what I did was you just kind of take this here, lift that up, and you can, you know, slide that down a little bit like that, adjust the guy line, which will lower the end of the foot box at that point, so you can kind of make it a little bit more storm worthy and whatnot. And you know, it'll definitely keep out the bad weather a little more. However, the downside is then that closes off a lot of the ventilation, so you're not getting as much airflow through the tent, and that's why I kind of got a lot of condensation. Now, the other problem with that was once I dropped the foot box down, it lowered the bottom end so much that it was in contact with my quilt all night. So all that condensation touching my quilt, I basically woke up with a soaking wet sleeping bag, and we ended up bailing that trip out a little bit. So it's one of the dangers of a freestanding single wall tent is that condensation. If anybody has any tips on how to deal with that type of thing, you know, that particular trip I sat with a towel, and probably good every hour to 2 hours I was wiping the entire inside of the tent down. I had to wring my towel out about 3 or 4 times, still getting the condensation off, and still ended up with a soaking wet sleeping bag. So I would certainly like some information on how to deal with that a little bit better with a single wall tent. I'm hesitant to go up to a double wall. Biggest reason is lightweight double wall tents are incredibly expensive. Plus, there's no way you're going to get as light of a weight as you will with a single wall tent, especially for the cost of it. So yeah, do the best we can though, right? Broken down definitely gives you an idea of the size compared to 2 trekking poles. It's a very small, lightweight package, less than 2 pounds, under $200. Can't really go wrong for a 3-season backpack.